Cool, only 6 hours this time.
They ask you how you are, you just have to say that you're fine when you're not really fine, but you just can't get into it because they would never understand.
Hello and welcome, my dear viewers. Today we are talking about the meta of teamfight tactics. I was thinking about making a patch note rundown basically every week once this game is out of PB and on the live servers. As we can see in the current patch, Draven got nerfed massively. Aatrox got a slight buff, which was absolutely necessary in my opinion. Also, what I can't really understand, Aurelion Sol got buffed, as well as Kindred got nerfed, Lulu got a bug fix which was really annoying. That happened to me way too often, that her ult didn't channel, now it channels again. MF and Morgana got a buff with more damage, and Volibear got a nerf which was absolutely necessary, where he hits only 5 targets instead of 7 in the late game. We got one bug fix in Gunslinger where the targets still were able to shoot even though they were stunned or frozen or knocked up, which was kind of annoying, but also Gunslinger was so weak, and still is, that bug was kind of helping it out to be stronger. So in my opinion, Gunslinger definitely needs a buff, but more about that later, because I will give an overall opinion that items are way too strong in this game, and champion and synergies are way too weak at the moment. And then on top of that, a bunch of bugs were fixed, where gold was generated randomly after death and things like that that aren't that important at the moment. So let's look at the champion tier list at this very moment. With super high win rates and absolutely deserved S rank, we have Aurelion Sol. After the buff, she just got massively strong. At the moment, Aurelion Sol is somewhat of a guaranteed win, because even without the dragon buff, she's really strong in the late game, because when the enemy has more than 4 units on the board, her ultimate, which deals AoE damage all the way to the backline, is just pretty overpowered at the moment in my opinion. That's why I didn't understand why they buffed her, because she didn't need one. Next S tier champion is Sejuani. Who wonders about that? I think it's stronger to have a level 1 Sejuani on board instead of a level 3 Garen or Mordekaiser. She works extremely well without items, which is super important for a tank, as well as her ultimate is game changing, like Gnar, which we'll come to later. After that we have Leona, again with a game changing ultimate. She's tanky and she's very efficient. Why? Because she works well without items, which is super important at the moment for the current meta. At the moment you only want to stack one hyper carry in the backline, give all the items to them, and just have a frontline that can work by themselves. And you are lucky if, I don't know, 1 out of 3 tanks gets off their ults. That's enough already to win games. The next champion you want to look for is Darius. He gets pretty weak in the late game, but early game when you can get him to level 2, in the mid game to level 3, he spikes extremely well. Why? Because he works great without items, he can heal himself, he takes and absorbs a lot of damage, especially in the early to mid game. He's just the perfect tank to look for every single game in my opinion. Instead of looking for synergies, you instead take away that noble buff, give that Darius or put that Darius in there and just win the early to mid game. Okay, next we have Gnar, and who doesn't take him once he sees him? Why? Because he is just strong in the early game, he is strong in the mid game and strong in the late game. Of course if you get him to level 2. But Gnar's ultimate is a game changer. Not only does he stun his targets and CC them, but also he basically fires their backline into your frontline, which can be game changing if everyone abuses this one hyper carry tactic. Besides that, he's a Yordle, and Yordle in my opinion is the only synergy that's worth going for at the moment, like fully stacked. as well as the dragon buff, kind of, but yeah, that's a big plus for Gunnar. And last we got, well, I was surprised first, but later today, when just I was recording and cutting this video, I saw that Cho'Gath got buffed massively. His Q range basically got doubled in radius, almost doubled in radius, which makes him basically knock up from mid game or early game every single target of the enemy, and late game he can knock up to 9 targets at the same time if they're positioned correctly, which is very strong because he gets his ult and ability pretty quickly for a tank who needs to work without items. So these are the champions you're looking for in the S tier, which work also without too much synergies. And yeah, early on Sol you want to stick with items though, you don't want to leave her alone. But besides that, I will just not go too much into detail about the A and B ranks, but a few of them are pretty strong as well. Ashe and Kayle got massive impactful ultimates. That's why they're pretty strong from mid to late game to fill out that 7th gap you have free on your board, and there's no synergies left you can really, or that are really worth going for. Draven got a massive nerf. Still, he's so strong. Why? Because he can stack his ability. He can have up to, I think, 3 axes at the same time, like 1 in the air, 2 in his hands, and just destroy the enemy, especially in the late game when you got him to higher levels. His stacking of axes, like having 3 abilities at the same time, while just dashing out damage with items, is really strong. But without items, I wouldn't recommend going for Draven. I would put Anivia, Brand and Kennen into one category. Why? Because they got AoE damage. While Kennen is more kind of a tank with CC, AoE CC, he's still doing a lot of damage. And I would at least every game in the late game look for one of these 3 champions. Next we got Lissandra and Veigar, kind of also in the same category. They can take out one of the enemy and just isolate them. And if this enemy, like Lissandra with CC and Veigar with pure damage, and if this enemy is the hypercarry of the enemy who struggles with healing himself, you already won the game, or the round in this case. As you probably have noticed, I'm not a very big fan of the noble buff, so I will just go to the B tier here and recommend a few champions. These are Braum, Morgana, Karthus, Lulu after the patch of course, the bug fix, and still Volibear. And lastly, if you are playing an Aurelion Sol hypercarry, you definitely want to look for Shyvana to get that dragon buff, because she can be... that dragon buff is pretty impactful, especially against other sorcerer type hypercarries. As well as the Yordle buff, it's in my opinion the only really strong buff in this game, and it can have a massive impact in the late game. Even switching out the level 3 tier 1 unit, a champion, for a level 1 Yordle, I would still go for it. This is the only case where synergy is actually stronger than champion. And going Yordle, if you haven't looked for it before in the game, and if it's late game already and you have already 5 Yordles on board, I would say go for it. Here we got the raw damage numbers of every single champion, but I can't go too much into detail while talking about this yet, because this doesn't include synergies with items, this doesn't include synergies with classes, and it's too early to talk about this. But if you just want to have a look over it, I just put it in here for fun in this case. So to sum up the video, you still at the current meta want to have that hyper carry team composition. This means you want to have one raw damage, very strong character in the backline with all your damage based items. And your tanks should usually, not always, but most of the time, not have any items at all and work good by themselves. This is why tanks, going for S tier tanks is way stronger than going for S tier hypercarries. You can still go Vayne or Tristana and carry the shit out of a game even in the late game with them by putting a lot of items on them and having S tier tanks. The other way around, it wouldn't go as well, having an Aurelion Sol in the backline with weak, low tier tanks. Besides that, the current meta changes almost daily, so to not miss any patch notes or meta talk or guides, or even a few gameplays once I get into the goddamn client, just subscribe to my channel and show under my videos with likes, dislikes and comments. Criticize me as much as you want, it's all appreciated. Just show me how I can do better, what I'm doing wrong. Thanks for watching. I always try to keep my videos entertaining, even though this patch notes kind of thing is pretty boring in general. But my other guides and videos will be more entertaining, I promise that. I see you in the next video. Thanks for watching and bye!